Salamun alaikum and welcome to The Awaited, a unique show produced by Imam Hussein TV, allowing you an insight into the history, life, legacy and future promise of the awaited Savior, Imam Al Mahdi. When we explain the concept of Imam Al Mahdi alayhi salam to Muslims and non-Muslims alike, the immediate question is raised: how can a human being be sustained and be alive for thousands of years? It's a fair question. That's why it is fundamentally important to analyze the scholars and representatives alive during the advent of the major occultation to understand some of the questions raised, such as: are there prophets? Are there examples of prophets who lived for similar amounts of years? What literature is there available for us to analyze and understand the long life of the Imam? What did Prophet Muhammad say about an Imam after him that will live a long life? Can the earth be void of an Imam, and does that contradict the teachings of the Prophet and the Quran? All this will be explained in another exciting episode of The Awaited. And today I have with me a very special guest and good friend of mine, student of the Islamic Seminary and speaker, Khadim Al-Hussein, Sheikh Ibraheim Al Ansari. Sheikhna, when we discuss Assalamu alaikum.
Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah.
The topic of long age is for some an easy topic because they have read the stories of the prophets. Of course, there are other aspects to it. And for some it's very difficult, even while knowing there are prophets who lived for so long. How do we tackle this?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Muhammadin wa ala ali bayti at-tayyibin at-tahirin. This is a question that not necessarily is something that we only ask. This is a question that the Imams already knew people will have an issue with. This is a question that Imam Al-Hasan Al-Askari foretold, and he answered it in some of his narrations. This is a question that scholars in the past, including those who were present in the minor occultation, like Sheikh Al-Saduq, they have also addressed it. The reason I say that is because of this. Look, so Sheikh Saduq one day went to ziyarah of Imam Rida alayhi afdal salatu wassalam, and over there he realized that a lot of people had questions about the occultation of the Imam. He comes back from ziyarah, and on his way he is also met with people. He also met people that also had questions about the occultation of the Imam. How long will he be in occultation for? Where is he? What will he be doing? Etc. What is he currently doing? Questions started coming in regards to his ghaibah. Keeping in mind, by the way, that not only Sheikh Saduq was a scholar, his father was also a scholar. So for example, when you go to fiqh books today, you will see sometimes, for example, it says قال Sheikh Saduq. It means Sheikh Saduq, of course. Once you say Ibn Babawayh said, Ibn Babawayh sometimes refers to Sheikh Saduq and sometimes refers to his father, Ali ibn Babawayh. Sometimes it refers to Sheikh Saduq as Muhammad ibn Babawayh, or other times Muhammad ibn Ali, Ali being his father. Sometimes you'll find fiqh books that say Ibn Babawayh. It means
both of them,
Sheikh Saduq and his father. So understand that these people were not, let's say, normal people in the sense that they had great scholarship and it ran in the family, and they were also close to the representatives of the Imam. So for example, Ali ibn Babawayh, his father, had contact with Al-Hussein ibn Ruh, the third representative of Imam Al-Mahdi ajala ta'ala farjuhu
so was
sharif.
that close to the time?
Ahsant.
Yeah.
They were during the minor occultation, they were present. Sheikh Al-Saduq, let me just give insight into how far back we are talking right now. Sheikh Al-Saduq is the teacher of Sheikh Al-Mufid and Sayyid Al-Murtada, otherwise known as Alam Al-Huda.
Yeah.
This is Sheikh Al-Saduq. Sheikh Saduq, yes, was present during the minor occultation. His father had contact with Al-Hussein ibn Ruh, the third representatives, and there's a story, in fact, where, for example, he asks the Imam to pray for him to have children. He says you will not receive children from this wife. You will marry another wife, and from her you will have sons who will be the scholars of
That's
this
from the
ummah,
third
etc.
representative.
This is the
telling
third
Shaykh
representative had a conversation with Imam al-Mahdi, then he relayed it back, and truly he married the second wife later, and of them Shaykh al-Saduq was born Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Babawayh, otherwise known Muhammad ibn Babawayh sometimes, or Shaykh al-Saduq. So with the blessings of the dua of the Imam, this person is also alive. Yani you can imagine the relationship he has. So when he sees all of these people are questioning the occultation, he's trying to think, how can I best answer these people? So he kept answering. Sometimes we say makufaid. You feel like you're not getting to a certain
brick wall.
Yeah, you get to a brick wall. People are listening, but they are not understanding. So one day, in a dream, Shaykh al-Saduq sees that he is doing tawaf around the Kaaba. Then he goes to the black stone and he kisses the black stone. As he kisses the black stone, he sees Imam al-Mahdi al-Muntadhar, ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif. Now, before someone comes to me and says, Ibrahim, this is a dream, let's put a very important introduction here. Man ra'ana faqad ra'ana. The one who
Full
sees
stop.
us has seen us.
Yeah.
In a dream we are talking about. Why? Because in a dream it is one of two things. Either you've had too much to eat before you slept and you started seeing random stuff. Or sometimes truly there is, for example, a sign or something. This is mostly found within prophets and salihin and ibadallah salihin, etc. They would find this. Sometimes no, you will have certain messages coming from a certain individual, like an imam. Sometimes the shaitan comes to you, but the shaitan cannot come in the form of a immaculate imam.
So, من
So
رآنا
فقد
فقد
رآنا.
رآنا.
So Imam al-Mahdi, he saw Imam al-Mahdi. So he said to him, my master, I've already written about your occultation, and I have already written about the circumstances of your occultation, and I've answered people's questions. He said to him, no, not in this manner that you are talking about. Do it in the manner where you talk about the lives of the prophets. So Imam al-Mahdi is already knowing that the issues that they are going to face is his long life, so he wants him to talk about the long lives of the Prophet. And of course, occultation within itself is something that was found within prophets. Not all prophets were available to all of mankind. Even at certain times, they had to be in certain places. So he said, talk about the prophets, so that people understand that there are specific things that are repeated. They are not necessarily starting with the Imam. And long lives have happened before. And so, Shaykh al-Saduq would decide to, by the orders of the Imam, of course here, would decide to write a book that he titled Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Na'mah, in reference to the holy verse that says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Al-Yawm akmaltu lakum dinakum wa atmamtu alaykum ni'mati wa raditu lakum al-Islam dina. So he called it Kamaluddin wa Tamamul Na'mah. طبعا, of course, some reference it as Ikmaluddin wa Itmamul Na'mah, and others in certain books would reference it as, for example, just Ikmaluddin, and they would write, no, if you read Ikmaluddin, it means this book. If you read Ikmaluddin wa Itmamul Na'mah, it is this book. And if you read Kamaluddin wa Tamamul Na'mah, it is also this book that was authored by Shaykh al-Saduq, may Allah bless his soul, by the orders of Imam al-Mahdi ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu al-sharif.
Shaykhna, in the book, are there examples of the prophets and which prophets and how long they lived?
Yeah, so the whole point was to show these examples from the prophets, to show that this was the way of the prophets, that this was possible in the literature that we share. For example,
and so, just to cut you off, in the Quran is also mentioned.
Of course.
So put
Yeah.
aside
Of
Shaykh
course.
al-Saduq, we can go straight to the Quran.
You
and there are
can go straight
examples,
to the
yeah.
Quran, but what did Shaykh al-Saduq do? So you see, sometimes many of the things are mentioned in the Quran. The issue then is, come and pick them from the Quran.
Yeah.
Shaykh al-Saduq compiled these things for you. Shaykh al-Saduq brought all of these things for you by the order of the Imam.
Yeah.
So this work in itself has been blessed. Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Na'mah, this work of Shaykh al-Saduq is truly blessed. So he mentions examples and stories that happened with the prophets. Some that have Quranic references, others, no, they are narrations. So I'll give you an example. First we'll take a Quranic reference, then we'll take a narration to balance it out. A Quranic reference is Nabi Allah Nuh. Look at Nuh in the Quran. وَلَبَثَ فِي قَوْمِهِ أَلْفَ سَنَةٍ إِلَّا 50 عاما.
950 years.
950 years. This is Quran speaking. لبث, what does it mean? لبث يعني he stayed within his qawm, he was with them. More he was asleep in a cave. If you want to tell me, for example, Ashab Kahf lived for a long life. No, put that to the side.
Which is another example
that's
as well.
Of course, that's another example. Though they are not prophets, but fine, put that to the side. Nabi Allah Nuh, 950 years, he is performing da'wah. His prophetic mission was 950 years.
So that's not even his life.
This isn't his life. His prophethood, according to Shaykh Saduq, in fact started 800 something years, at the age of 800 and something. That is when the mission of prophethood started. Then 950 years, he's got what? Da'wah, that he was giving to the people. Then what happens? The great flood. After the flood, he lives with his people again.
How long do we know?
For a total, it would totally amount to about 2,450 years
total.
or 2,500, one of the two. In total. So if we calculate 800 minna 950, there's
After
about
the
600
flood,
something left, let's say. 650, 700 years left. Sure. After the flood. So you see here, Noah has a very good example. Why? Because from one aspect, you've got the 950 years, they're written Quranically. The other numbers are not written in the Quran. But 950 years written in the Quran. We know for a fact he didn't start his prophethood from birth, not like Nabi Allah Isa. We know for a fact that he stayed alive after the flood. So minimum, even if we want to take these numbers to not be true, minimum he lived 1,500 years, minimum. But the reality is that he lived for 2,400 and something years, if not 2,500. Sure. So this is an example that you find in the Quran. Another example that you find...
To cut you off, sorry, Sheikh. Some would argue he's a prophet.
More mushkila, I'll come to that.
Yeah, he's a prophet. Now you can't compare, as some would say, a prophet to the Imam.
That's fine. I will answer that question. I'll give you two more examples of prophets. Actually, do you know what? Leave the examples. Sulaiman, Nabi Allah Sulaiman, 730 years he lived. Nabi Allah Adam, 900 and something years he lived. Okay? You tell me they're prophets? Khidr, a prophet or not a prophet? Khidr is not a prophet. Yes, there is a debate. But al-Zahir, that al-Khidr is a Abdun Salih. Khidr lived from the time of Musa and he still hasn't died. If you want to tell me Nabi Allah Isa, because I was going to bring Nabi Allah Isa as example, you're going to tell me he's a prophet. Khidr is not a prophet. Another thing you might tell me about Nabi Allah Isa is he was resurrected. Khidr lives with us. Khidr lives on this earth. Al-Khidr from the time of Nabi Allah Musa, so older than Imam Al-Mahdi. And he is still alive. And he did not sleep in a cave like Ashab Kahf. He is alive from the time of Nabi Allah Musa. Imagine what happened after Nabi Allah Musa. Nabi Allah Isa came. After Nabi Allah Isa, 400 years until our beloved Prophet. After our Prophet, another 1,400 and something years. And Al-Khidr is still alive. And this is agreed upon by all sects.
All sects.
All sects believe that Al-Khidr is still alive. No one would claim that Al-Khidr is not alive anymore. And all sects believe that alongside Nabi Allah Isa, he will come and pray behind Imam Al-Mahdi Ajallah Ta'ala Farajah Sharif. So this long life is there. Let me give you another example.
Before you get into the example, because I'm really loving where this topic is leading.
Okay.
We're going to take a short break for the viewers, and shall we return with this example? Hold that thought, Sheikh. Inshallah. We'll see you shortly.
We have all lost loved ones. Our duty of care towards parents, siblings, friends, and family does not end with their death. Rather, we have a duty to pray for their forgiveness and to continue our kindness by conveying rewards to them by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha. Imam As-Sadiq Salamullahi alayhi says, if you recite Alhamd on a dead person 70 times, don't be surprised if then the soul returns to the body. With a small contribution, you can have the names of your marhumeen shown on Imam Hussein TV 3. For more details on how to get this done, WhatsApp, marhumeen, or call us now on the numbers on the screen.
Welcome back, dear viewers. We were before the break discussing the long life of Imam Al Mahdi Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farajah Sharif, and how there are examples from the Holy Quran and from the prophets of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala of long life. And the Shaykh was giving us a few more examples, and we were diving into one example and I cut him off. So Shaykhna, let's return to that thought.
Yeah, so just one more non-prophet example we were talking about
Because we
earlier.
said the prophets can be, oh, he's a
Yeah,
prophet.
because you said he's a prophet,
Yeah,
etc. So one more non-prophet example we'll mention from a story of a prophet
Okay.
that Shaykh Saduq actually mentions in his book.
Sure.
And if you remember, I said sometimes the book is referred to as Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Ni'mah, and other times if you read just Ikmaluddin, it means this book. Shaykh al-Tusi narrates this narration and he references it as Ikmaluddin. This is just an example for us to realize how the book is sometimes referenced. So he references it, Ikmaluddin al-Shaykh al-Saduq, and then he mentions the narration. The narration is that Nabi Allah Dawood alayhi wa ala nabina wa alihi afdalu salati wa salam one day left his home and he was reciting the Zabur. As he was reciting it, the narration mentions when Nabi Allah Dawood used to recite the Zabur, not a single stone or mountain or anything would stay silent. All of them would recite it with him.
Subhanallah.
There was a man by the name of Hizqil who was in a mountain and he heard the mountains and the stones reciting it. So he knew that Nabi Allah Dawood was approaching. Nabi Allah Dawood said, "Would you mind if I climb up the mountain with you?" He said no. Nabi Allah Dawood was upset. Allah Azza wa Jal revealed to Hizqil that allow him to join you in the mountain. So he goes to him. As he sits down with him, they are conversing, and Nabi Allah Dawood asks him some important questions. Of the questions are you ever tempted with the desires of this world? There's a few questions before it, I'm going to leave them.
Nabi Allah Dawood asks
Hizqil, yeah.
Okay.
There's questions before it, I'm going to leave them. If you want to refer back to it, please just write Nabi Allah Dawood and Hizqil, you'll find it.
Sure.
And Shaykh Saduq mentions it in his book, Kamaluddin wa Tamamun Ni'mah. Very beautiful story. The last of those questions he asks him in that narration, he says, "Have you ever been swayed by the desires of this world?" He says to him, "If I have had desires, I'm not going to say no to you." He said, "So then how do you stay away from them?" He says, "I stay away from them by looking into this cave." So Dawood said, "Hold on a second. Okay, fine. You're a human being. You're going to have desires. How do you stay away from them? I look at this cave. How does that link?"
Doesn't add up, yeah.
So he says, "Look into that corner." In that corner, there was a metal bed. On that metal bed, there lay a skeleton.
A skeleton.
A skeleton.
Okay.
The bones of it were تقريبا finished as well. There's a skeleton there. And on the bed, the person who the skeleton belongs to has written on the bed, "I am Fulan, this is my name. I have been king, I have ruled for 1,000 years. And I have built 1,000 cities. And I have married 1,000 virgins, and this is where I am today." So no desire comes to Hizqil anymore. Why? Because he realizes this is my end.
This is your akhirah.
Saying, "Has he going to tell me how does this link with our example?" This is a non-prophet example. How long did he live? A king.
Thousands of years.
1,000 years.
1,000 years.
He lived
1,000
1,000 years.
cities. Yeah.
Oh, this is a non-prophet. Other than the fact, I will bring you a narration that Imam Al Askari mentions, that Shaykh Saduq mentions in his book, where he says that Imam Al Mahdi, you said, "Oh, these are prophets, this is an Imam." Imam Al Mahdi will repeat the sunnah of the prophets of long lives and occultation.
Subhanallah.
The Imams, many times they came. You look at Imam Al Hussein, "Assalamu alayka ya waritha Adam safwatillah. Assalamu alayka ya waritha Nuh al-Nabiyillah." They inherit prophethood. Prophets are not far from the Imams in that sense that we are talking about now.
No, and from the angle of those who obviously dispute the wujud of the A'imma and the states of the A'imma.
No problem. So this is examples of non-prophets, other than the fact that we must keep in mind that the Imam will be enlivening specific ways of the Prophet during that time.
We brushed over it earlier before the break. Ashab al-Kahf.
Yeah.
Thousands of years. Is that not another strong example for?
Of course, of course.
Because they weren't prophets.
They were not prophets. They saw specific misdeeds within their community. As a result of it, they took isolation in a cave. In that cave, Allah Azza wa Jal made them go to sleep. After that, they would wake up from the sleep. There is a opinion that they did not sleep, rather they died and Allah resurrected them. By the way, regardless of which example which way we go, whether they died or whether they went to sleep, there's a very important thing to remember. Allah is able. Leave prophets, leave examples, leave everything. If, for example, today, if I'm talking to, because this is not a conversation I'm going to have with an atheist. This is because an atheist, first of them, they need to understand Allah, then they will understand Imam Mahdi later, at a later stage. This is a conversation I have with a person who believes in a deity. This is a person who believes in Allah Azza wa Jal, who has tawheed. So if I'm having that conversation with a person who has tawheed, then I will say, okay, part of tawheed, Allah is able or no? He is able.
Ends right there. Yeah.
If he is able, khalas.
Yeah.
Hatta if there were no examples. He is able, it ends there. بَلَا قَادِرِينَ عَلَىٰ أَن نُسَوِّي بَنَانِهِ. The Quran says, indeed we are able to even make, or remake rather, remake, not even make, to remake his fingertips. And how specific are fingertips?
Yeah.
The DNA, etc. I don't want to get into all of that stuff. But how specific are fingertips? بَلَا قَادِرِينَ عَلَىٰ أَن نُسَوِّي بَنَانِهِ. As a reply to those that said, how can people be resurrected after death? No, we will bring them in their exact form. بَلَا قَادِرِينَ. Their fingertips will be exactly the same. So a person who is able, for a being who is able to do such a thing, how can they not be able to then keep an Imam alive during all this time?
You mentioned about the dispute about Ashab al-Kahf. You said some say that they might have died and been brought back.
Yeah.
There are some people that dispute that same concept with Imam Mahdi. They say he died or he is dead and he'll be resurrected. Can you touch upon that for me, please?
So this goes back.
What does Al-Qa'im mean? Because I think it links into this, right?
So the idea of Al-Qa'im, does Al-Qa'im mean the one who rises? Al-Qa'im translation is the one who rises. There are narrations. This narration actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to read it, the one that you're referring to. It's a narration that talks about Imam Al-Mahdi, Ajallahu Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif, dying, then being resurrected.
Sure.
The chain of narrations is عن موسى بن سعدان عن عبد الله ابن القاسم الحضرمي عن أبي سعيد الخراساني قال قلت لأبي عبد الله عليه السلام. أبي عبد الله is who? إمام الصادق عليه أفضل الصلاة والسلام. المهدي والقائم واحد. Is المهدي and the قائم one? فقال نعم. Yes. فقلت لأي شيء سمي المهدي. Why was he called المهدي? قال لأنه يهدي إلى كل أمر خفي. Because he guides to all that which is not apparent. وسمي القائم لأنه يقوم بعدما يموت. He was called القائم because he will rise, يقوم, he will get up, he will rise after he dies. إنه يقوم بأمر عظيم. He will rise with a great issue. This narration in itself, first of all, there's multiple ways to address narrations like this. The first thing is this a consensus that the scholars have? If yes, then fine. If no, then we have another issue. Are there a group of scholars that take this narration? The reality is, there is no Shi'i scholar, there is no scholar that has said with the death of Imam al-Mahdi that he died or that he will die and that he will be resurrected.
So who is this narrated by?
So this chain of narration starts with Musa ibn Sa'dan, Abdullah ibn al-Qasim al-Hadrami, and Abi Sa'id al-Khurasani. Actually, that's a good question. These individuals, so Musa ibn Sa'dan. Musa ibn Sa'dan is a person who in his narrations is considered weak by al-Najashi. And there is a scholar by the name of Ibn al-Ghada'iri, although some scholars of hadith and of rijal consider him to be a bit fierce with his opinions. No
Harsh.
mujamalat
Yeah,
ones.
yeah.
Straight, this is how he is. When he talks about him, he says that he does not take narrations from him, for he is weak in narrations, and he gives the explanation. Najashi just mentions he is weak in transmitting narrations. He mentions he is weak because he has ghulu in his aqa'id. So he has given that explanation, and hence you find, for example, a person like Sayyid al-Kha'i rahmatullahi alayh, he does not take him as a narrator as a reliable source in this narration, or any narration rather. طبعا, there is an individual by the name of Ali ibn Ibraheim Al who took him as one of those who he narrates from in his book Tafsir al-Qummi. Interestingly, Sayyid al-Kha'i, when he talks about this specific issue, he says even if we take Ali ibn Ibrahim's side of calling him reliable, it is important for us to realize that at the same time Najashi and Ibn al-Ghada'iri have considered him to be weak, and on this basis we cannot be certain of his reliability. Therefore he is weak. Other than the fact that Tafsir al-Qummi, there's an issue with it to begin with, but this is, we're getting into Rijal right now. I'll just mention this very quick.
Let's not get sidetracked.
Tafsir al-Qummi, there's an issue with it to begin with because we do not actually know from a reliable source if it was truly written by Ali ibn Ibrahim or not. That's a separate conversation. Anyway, so that is Musa ibn Sa'dan. Then you have Abdullah ibn al-Qasim al-Hadrami, who is described as al-Butl. You know, from Butlan, a person who is full of butl.
Yeah.
Other than the fact
invalid.
this is the invalid.
Yeah.
He's considered invalid. Other than the fact that here the narration is from who? Imam al-Sadiq. Some scholars believe he lived during the time of Imam al-Rida.
Doesn't add up again. Yeah.
Although he narrates it from another person, which is a way that we can for example, say, fine, he lived during the time of Imam Rida, he narrated from someone else by the name of Abi Sa'id al-Khurasani, who is also considered weak. If you refer back to the hadith, the Rijal book that has been compiled by Sayyid al-Kha'i rahmatullah alayh, he also mentions that he is weak. So that is in that sense. So this narration in itself is weak, other than the fact that our scholars have not taken such an opinion to begin with. Other than the fact that taking such an opinion that he has died is an issue. Why is it an issue?
Why is a big question always, man? Why?
The why is always a big question. The earth will never be free from a hujjah. If a hujjah was to die, then what happens? Where's the hujjah? Fine, Imam Mahdi died. Where's the hujjah? We need a hujjah. The earth will never be free from a hujjah.
Let's play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
Can some argue that the ulama are the hujjah?
No. And I'll tell you why no. You might come to me, devil's advocate, from a point of view that between Nabi Allah Isa and Nabi Allah Muhammad there were 400 years. Sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi. There were 400 years. In those 400 years, people will argue maybe there was no hujjah. We say no, there was a hujjah. The examples of hujjah is the examples of Abdul Muttalib, the examples of Abu Talib. Abu Talib is not an ordinary man. Potentially he was a hujjah of the hujjah of Allah Azza wa Jal. لا تخلو الأرض من hujjah. Earth will never be free from a hujjah. There has to be a hujjah. So you might tell me, fine, there might be a Abdun Salih like these individuals who is, for example, one of our scholars during this time. I tell you no, this applies before the Prophet. After the Prophet set a rule. من مات ولم يعرف إمام زمانه مات ميتة الجاهلية. Meaning a hujjah after the Prophet is only an imam. Meaning, if Imam al-Mahdi was to die, not only do I need a hujjah, I need a hujjah who is an imam. That makes 13. The narration says 12.
Everything starts falling apart.
So everything falls apart, of course. Which is why the Quran even says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, إنما أنت منذر ولكل قوم هاد. You are but a warner, and for every nation there is a guide. So if Imam al-Mahdi has died, where is the guide? Who is going to guide me? If Imam al-Mahdi has died, where is the hujjah? If Imam al-Mahdi has died, who is the imam of my time? So as you said, everything from an aqaidi point of view starts to fall apart. Therefore, Imam al-Mahdi is alive. This is not the meaning of al-Qa'im, not at all. Rather, al-Qa'im has other meanings that were explained by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalu salatu wassalam. Being that he has died and he will be resurrected after is not true at all, because it means that earth will be free from a hujjah. And what does the narration says? What does the narration say? لا تخلو الأرض من حجة ولولا ذلك لساخت بكم الأرض.
So there won't be an earth anymore.
There won't be an earth anymore. So we live by the blessings of the presence of the Imam to begin with, and that is a topic by itself. But the idea that I want to put forward is that this narration, if we want to look at the chain of narrators, it doesn't work. If we want to look at if scholars have even taken such a opinion, there is no such an opinion. If we want to have a logical debate about it, even then, it does not work.
Is that the only narration?
In terms of this, we don't have narrations like this. Rather, we have other narrations of what al-Qa'im means. For example,
which takes me on to my next question. What is al-Qa'im?
Even better. Al-Qa'im has many different meanings, and many different Imams had different narrations as to what it would mean. Those who said, for example, he will rise in order to fill the earth with justice and equity after it was filled with injustice and oppression. Those who came forward and said, no, al-Qa'im is al-Qa'im bil-Amr. He will be the one in charge. And if that is the case, then all the Imams are Qa'imin. And that is true, which is why the Holy Prophet ﷺ would say, Al-Hasan wal-Hussein imaman, qama wa in qa'ida. Qama is the same as Qa'im. Sure. All the Imams are Qa'im. They're all Qa'imina bil-Amr. But there is a narration that is actually quite interesting, especially when you link the idea of the role of Imam al-Mahdi in avenging the blood of Imam al-Hussein alayhi afdalu salatu wasalam. There is a narration from Imam al-Baqir alayhi afdalu salatu wasalam that when Imam al-Hussein was martyred, the angels started to weep and cry. And they said, "Oh Allah, are you going to let them get away with this?" He said, "I will avenge for his blood, even if it is later." They said to him, "Ya Allah, and how will you do so?" He would unveil for them the rest of the Imams after Imam al-Hussein. Of them was one Imam standing in prayer, Qa'im fi salah. He said he will be the one avenging it. So Imam al-Baqir would say that is why he was called al-Qa'im. Others would say, as I said, Qa'im because he will fill the earth with justice and equity. So these are different explanations of what al-Qa'im is. If we want to narrow it down, the idea is that he will be the first Imam to have full authority over the world, and it will be the first full government that will be established from an Imam, which is Imam al-Mahdi ajala ta'ala farajahu al-Sharif, known as al-Qa'im bil-Amr. طبعا, when we look at these alqab, yes, they are all shared between the Imams. All the Imams are Kadhim, all the Imams are Rida, all the Imams are Sadiq. But certain times means that certain Imams need to be known more with a specific laqab, with a specific characteristic. During the time when Imam al-Sadiq, during his time, a lot of sects are coming out, he had to be known as a Sadiq, the one who is truthful. During the time, for example, Imam al-Kadhim, in the circumstances that he was in, he was what? Al-Kadhim, although they were all Al-Kadhim. They were all Shuhada, but Imam al-Hussein is Sayyid al-Shuhada, because that circumstance meant that he should be known by it. And likewise, for Imam al-Mahdi, they are all Qa'imina bil-Amr. But he needs to be known as Al-Qa'im because of the circumstance that he will rise up in.
Ahsant. We pray to Allah. That's a lot to take in, and we haven't even scratched the surface of this. Short da'at, we pray to Allah that we are all amongst the servants and the Ansar of Imam Sahib al-Zaman.
Inshallah.
We will touch on in further episodes, inshallah, on the companions of Imam Sahib al-Zaman, and I hope to be from the companions of Imam Sahib al-Zaman, inshallah, as we do all, inshallah. Shaykhna, if you conclude to us with a dua, please.
Inshallah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma kulli waliyika al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan salawatuka alayhi wa ala aba'ih fi hadhihi as-sa'ati wa fi kulli sa'a waliyan wa hafizan wa qa'idan wa nasira ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين.
Allahumma salli ala
Allahumma salli.
Ahsantum Shaykhna, thank you so
Jazakumullah
much
khair, jazak. Thank
for
you
this
very much.
insightful talk
Jazakumullah
on the life of Imam Mahdi. Very useful to know this information
Allah
and to understand that there are examples in history, and even if there aren't examples in history, Allah, as you mentioned, is able, and if He is able, anything can happen.
Ahsantum.
On that note, dear viewers, I'd like to conclude this episode of The Awaited, this very insightful episode, and inshallah you'll join us for the next episode where we'll discuss further on the life of Imam Sahib al-Zaman. Thank you.